Greetings and welcome back to yet another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as Eve. So we've been in kind of a slump lately, and I think this is pretty obvious because the last 3 dailies I've uploaded have been severely under average, at least to how I relatively usually perform. And that's something that kind of begs the question, am I doing something wrong? Is the game trolling me? Maybe it's a bit of a combination of both. I think it's like a combination of both. I make a mistake on the run that I'm not really maybe even acutely aware of, and what ends up happening is the game doesn't go easy on me. It just says like, you made the decision, you made your bed, now lie in it. And just you kind of have to deal with it. Which in some cases it's a good thing because it makes you own up to your mistakes, maybe learn something from them. But in another case, I'm just trying to have a fun run sometimes, game. Like, just give me a break. But if you look at the runs, I think that the majority of it is not even that I'm playing that badly. I feel like I actually have been playing pretty well, at least relatively with what I have. It's just that I can't get enough damage or at least enough output to get to things like boss rush and hush. And as a result, I'm missing out on a lot of points. And of course, that is making me rank badly. And since those objectives are so important, we need a way. We need a surefire way to actually get to them. And playing as Eve kind of instilled some confidence into me because Eve is already a character which is strong enough on her own to really get to those important objectives. You can get to Mom in a relatively easy manner. You maybe need like 1 tier's upgrade at most, but just because you do have that razor blade, you have your transformation. That's going to give you enough damage and just stopping power to kill most of the bosses that you encounter up until that point. And when you kill Mom, you have that really crazy combo with the Polaroid, which will allow you to kill boss rush very easily. So what is there to be concerned of? Well, of course, there is to be concerned of if I'm playing the daily, because of course I'm gonna make a very silly decision at some point, because apparently I don't like self-harm items at all, which goes in tandem with like the real life version. You know, I don't really want to harm myself, but in the game, apparently self-harm items are really good, and I've been kind of underestimating them for the majority of my playstyle. And I think that's a very fair assumption to make, just because the yesterday's daily and today's daily had a very similar circumstance. Like I made the decision at a certain point to leave the razor blade or the blood rights behind, and that ended up costing me essentially the whole run. And I feel like that's one of those things which now if like yesterday I wasn't sure of my mistake, like if I didn't learn something yesterday, this daily was definitely there to kind of ensure that knowledge and just put it in my brain. And maybe we're gonna have another one like this tomorrow, just so the game tests me if I actually learned my lesson. But we'll see how that actually turns out. So as I've said, of course, what I try to do is, or at least what I was alluding to in what I said before, is when you get to Mom, you get that Polaroid. And we know we're gonna get the Polaroid because this is the one that goes to the cathedral, which means we'll get the Polaroid from Mom. And you can see that on the left side of the screen, there's like a cross, and a cross indicates we're going to the cathedral. And of course, that means we're gonna get the Polaroid, as I've said 3 times before. And what the Polaroid allows you to do is when you use the razor blade, and if you have, of course, half of a red heart remaining, it does allow you to trigger that invincibility. You get a little bit of a shield. And with how the razor blade works, it's unlike any other self-harm item. Unlike the Ivy Bag, for example, it's still gonna give you the benefit when you use it if you are invincible, but it's not gonna take your health away, whereas something like Ivy Bag would. And that allows you to not only use it multiple times throughout the one period, but it does allow you also to just get a lot of damage from just one use of it. And not only does it allow you to kind of mitigate damage, so like whenever you feel like you're gonna get hit, you use the razor blade, you hit yourself, you don't take any damage penalty, and when you're invincible, you keep using it. Like you use it 7 or 8 times in total, and you get like 10 damage as a return just from avoiding one hit. So if you kind of do the math, if you use it like 3 times and you get 3 spirit hearts, you're very easily gonna get something like 20 damage on top of what you already have. It does last only for 1 room, but you can see how powerful this can mean something like boss rush. So as soon as you get to Mom, you pick up the Polaroid, and pretty much you know that you're set for boss rush. You don't need any other items literally to beat it. And of course, when you get a hush, you can pretty much do the same strategy, provided you have enough health. So why did this run turn out differently? Why didn't I decide to go with that strategy? Well, I started to go in that direction because there was a devil deal, and I decided to avoid it. I didn't want to pick up the devil items because, of course, I'm trading my health away, and I desperately need it if I actually want to pull the strategy off. And I felt like it was going to be a good time to showcase it, just because in most cases, I think whenever I'm playing as Eve, I find a better spacebar item, maybe I find blank card or things like that, I'm just kind of forced to replace it, and or maybe I don't have enough health to really make that strategy work, so I kind of leave it behind. But in this particular case, it seemed like it's gonna turn out well, because the first Devil Deal wasn't all that spectacular, so I decided to go via the Angel Deal route and just stick with the Razor Blade. Well, at a certain point, I was like, well, this run is pretty strong, it's not that bad, of course, and when I got the second Angel Deal, I got Holy Light, so I felt like, wow, this is a really good combo. And now, what will I do? Well, I'll just decide to replace my Razor Blade with Compost. And I thought Compost was gonna be the better choice of the two, but looking back on it, it definitely wasn't. Like, Compost is definitely a really good item. It's an item, like I said before, that can essentially win a round on its own, but what you really need something to get it going. Either you need a lot of battery charges, so you need like a Sack of Sacks or maybe Sackboy, or you need something that kind of reduces your charges on the active item, or just a little bit of luck. And sadly, nothing of that really happened. I wasn't able to get to the shops very easily. There just weren't a lot of consumables on the ground for this to make it actually work, and there just weren't a lot of battery charges, and of course I also didn't get any items which would synergize with it, so Compost was essentially a dead item. I've replaced a pretty much surefire strategy to get to Hush very easily and pretty much beat the game that way with an item that was essentially dead in my hands, and there was really nothing I could have done about it. I mean, of course, after picking up Compost, and going to the next floor, like, of course, in that certain state, I could have picked up the Razor Blade and have been aware of it, but after seeing that it didn't really work out how I thought it would, then of course, then it was too late. But with how everything else turned out, I still thought that maybe there's some, like, solace to be found. Like, maybe I thought, maybe because of the combos, I have, like, 5 tier delay, or at least I got to 5 tier delay. So I felt like maybe that's gonna be enough with something like Holy Light to really carry me. But what ended up happening is I was very low on my HP. I think I had, like, 2 red health containers, at some point even 1, and I was just kind of forced to take some health, because I really can't go into those really harder floors, especially on the hard daily where there are a lot more champion enemies, with only 1 red health, because I will end up dying. That's a suicide wish. But of course, if I take more red health, that means I'm gonna be taken out of the Horror Babylon transformation, which not only will make my Compost much less effective, because of course your flies and spiders scale with your damage, but it's also gonna make Holy Light less effective, because now Holy Light also scales with your damage. So I was stuck in a position where I had to take some health, because otherwise I would have ended up dying, and as a result, of course, my damage dropped to 2.63, and I was forced to play through this through pretty much the majority of the game, and it wasn't a nice experience. I feel like I was losing more points via time when I was trying to kill the enemies than I actually gained by killing and exploring the floor. So my best choice of action was actually just try to get to the next floor as soon as possible. And it was a bummer. Like, there's nothing to be done here in this position, because I feel like all my choices, at least all of my chances of getting some items, are pretty much gone, because at this point we can only hope for like a Devil Deal or 2, but even in that case, it's not really guaranteed to give us anything really good. Like in this case, we got Brother Bobby, which is obviously not going to be something that's going to change the outcome of this run for the better. But maybe what was surprising to me, that even with 2.63 damage, like with the items that we only had like essentially 10 items in total, and with Holy Light and Euthanasia were really the only 2 items that kind of helped our DPS. And with just these 2 items, I felt like relatively okay. It's not that I was super strong, I wasn't obviously, but it was enough to kind of help me clear through the rooms. I think it was majority due to AoE and just some room permutation that I've gotten. Like, luckily there weren't a lot of really hard rooms. I would imagine there are a lot of rooms with like leeches in them, I would ended up dying much earlier on. But also towards the end of the game decided to be a little bit nicer and started giving us Spirit Hearts as maybe a little bit of a consolation, but it definitely helped just in me feeling a little bit more safe, and as a result I kind of kept going and tried to get to the end. Another, I think, point I would like to mention that I feel like this run really kind of screwed us over on is the fact that there weren't a lot of consumables. Like, we didn't really get a lot of bombs, we didn't really get a lot of keys, so as a result, I really wasn't able to take advantage of the shops or maybe even anything else that existed in the game. Like, I couldn't open chests, and of course there really weren't a lot of chests, and I'm not really sure why that is. I don't think that there is a consumable difference on hard modes. I was under the impression that the only thing that is actually affected in hard mode is the fact how often red hearts drop, or just hearts in general, and not other consumables. So I was kind of surprised by this, but obviously this might be just due to variance, or maybe there were a lot of consumables, but I just didn't notice it because I was too preoccupied worrying about surviving, but I'm not really sure. I just tried to say that there really wasn't a lot of consumables, and I feel like that did affect the run somewhat, just because I really wasn't able, like I said before, to get some of those strategies and combos going that I hope would work out for the better. But at some point, don't you fret, we got a damage upgrade. We got Small Rock, and it put us at like 3.9 damage, and then we got that's not all. This is not even my final form. We got the Fat Odd Mushroom, and that boosted our damage to 4.2, and that's just amazing, because now we're actually able to... No, not really, it's not amazing. It's actually still pretty poor. Not still, but it's really, really poor. But luckily, because of Bob's Brain and because of the before-mentioned items, we were able to clear the rooms quite effectively, and it wasn't that big of a deal. But obviously, we were in a very much of a slump. Another thing which I feel like this run could have definitely given us, or at least threw us a bone, are blood banks. And there were a few arcades, one of them had no blood bank at all, but then just blood banks weren't appearing in this run. And I feel like if only one appeared, then I could have kind of retracted on my choice, picked up the Ivy bag, and maybe kind of made a combo work with that. But even that really didn't turn out to be a valid strategy, because there weren't blood banks. So like I said at the start of the run, I feel like I made a wrong decision, and the game just decided to be like, well, you made the decision, you can't go back, there are no reprimands, that's it, you're done. And of course, at the end of the run, I did finish it as always, and I ended up ranking 600. And when I went back to check the Reddit threads, I noticed a lot of people said, wow, this is a really powerful run. And this is kind of comical at this point, because whenever I have a really weak run, I feel like everyone else has a really strong one. But what ended up happening is there was a Judas' Shadow on the 3rd floor. And if you remember, that is the floor where you would get where I got an angel deal, and other people obviously got a devil deal because they took the devil item on the previous floor. So if I had Judas as a Shadow, I think this run could have gone a lot better, but again, I can't be too upset by this. This is just bound to happen sometimes. You're gonna fall into a slump, you're gonna have a few bad dailies, who knows, maybe tomorrow's daily is also gonna be a bad daily, and I'm just trying to get to the end. But I feel like in the whole scheme of things, when you look at it, a fine challenge is also fun. Like playing a daily with only 2 point something damage is bound to be a very transformative experience. It just gives you a little bit more perspective on the game. Maybe you gain a new appreciation for certain items, like in this case the Razor Blade or Bolt Rides, and I feel like you learn something from it. And of course, I think that attitude and just the preservation to go forward is really what's the most important when you look at the daily. It's not about the score, it's not about the run, it's not about how well you do, it's just about what can you take out of this mistake and can you apply it in the next daily. So hopefully next time we play as Eve or maybe as Samson and we get Blood Rights or the Razor Blade, we're gonna be able to use it to their fullest advantage to actually start to get some really good runs. So I hope with this you enjoyed this one, guys, and I hope to see you next time.